Welcome to Mark's British Airways Fleet Update, looking at short and long-haul fleets.
Welcome to Mark's Trains, Planes and Trams. Welcome to another British Airways Fleet Update. What? You say you've only just had a fleet update from me? Well, of course you're right, but there's a lot going on. British Airways trying to catch up with overdue tasks on its fleet. Planes moving here, there and everywhere. And if we leave it too long, there'll be too much to talk about. So as the new year gets into momentum, British Airways making some progress, and that's positive news. There's not a lot of positive news about British Airways right now, is there, quite frankly? So let's talk about what's happening. We'll talk about the short haul fleets first, and we'll talk about the city flyer fleet. And before I do, can I just say massive thanks to everyone. Tremendous reception to the last video. Thanks for your likes. You might think it's a bit tedious having to press that like button, but I really appreciate it. It does make a big difference to the YouTube algorithm. Just a small request from me, press the like button if you think what I'm saying here is helpful, useful, interesting. And if you've got any comments, do leave some comments. Comments like more information that you've got that I perhaps would benefit from. Questions about the British Airways fleet that are triggered from this video, and maybe questions that you'd like me to answer in the next video about the British Airways fleet. Well, we'll kick off then with that city flyer fleet, the Embraer 190s. And I've told you in the last couple of updates that Embraer 190 Alpha Echo has been at Exeter since the 17th of December. That remains the case. The other bit of news on the British Airways City Flyer fleet is that aircraft Alpha Foxtrot was on its way from Florence to Stansted, one of the weekend flights into Stansted, the BA 7016 on the 4th of January. Unfortunately, fairly serious incident, suffered an engine failure on takeoff, and the pilots intervened quite quickly, decided they were going to divert to Milan Malpensa. And I'm showing you an extract from Flight Radar 24 here of the aircraft after departure from Florence and then making its way into Milan Malpensa. The aircraft has been on the ground in Milan since that incident. No doubt British Airways contemplating how it can get an engine to that aircraft in Milan and get it repaired. Unlikely to be allowed to operate out of Milan with a single engine. That moves us on to the British Airways Euroflyer fleet, largely based out of London Gatwick. Airbus A321 X-Ray India remains at Birmingham for its maintenance, been there since the 15th of December. Another incident on departure with an empty aircraft this time. X-Ray Juliet had been at Madrid since the 29th of November. That was on its way back late in the evening on the 9th of January with a departure from Madrid, but the aircraft ran into difficulties on departure, did get airborne, but quickly made its way back to Madrid. Not quite sure what the problem is, but again, showing you some extracts here from Flight Radar 24 of that departure and the pretty immediate return. So that aircraft remains at Madrid, no doubt rectification work underway. Probably a little bit easier for BA to deal with that at Madrid than it is to deal with the Embraer 190 in Milan. No doubt that aircraft will be repaired and on its way back to Gatwick. And on the A320 fleet in Euroflyer, Golf Alpha Tango Kilo flew flight 9750 to Madrid on the 4th of January, and that remains there for maintenance. Tango November was due to fly from Glasgow to Heathrow on the 9751 flight on the 27th of December. I questioned in my last update why they were sending it to Heathrow, but actually that flight never happened, although it was filed as a flight plan and it was recorded on many of the industry systems. The aircraft remained in Glasgow under maintenance. So we'll have to see what happens there. Well, on the mainline short haul fleet, I've got a lengthy list actually of things to talk about. Majority of the movements and activities actually relate to the Airbus A319s, which is slightly surprising because they form actually a much smaller part of the fleet. But Delta Bravo Charlie Delta flew back from Birmingham after its refit on the 8th of January back into fleet service. Charlie Foxtrot remains at Dublin, been there since the 28th of November. Charlie Bravo flew from London Heathrow out to Madrid on the 3rd of January on the BA 9277. Empty aircraft move, that remains there. Charlie Kilo in the Airbus A319 fleet flew up to Birmingham for maintenance and refit on the 8th of January. And we talked last time about Papa Sierra having flown to Abu Dhabi on the 10th of December. That remains there, but it was joined on the 6th of January by another Airbus 319 Papa Romeo. So Papa Romeo and Papa Sierra in Abu Dhabi for maintenance. And I've talked previously on this channel, but I guess worth reflecting once again just how much work British Airways is having to contract out to other maintenance providers. And no doubt that comes at a cost. I'm sure British Airways will negotiate. They're reasonably astute commercially, but nonetheless, this is probably a lot more expensive than having to do the work in-house, even if perhaps labour is a little bit cheaper in some of these places. And of course, flying an aircraft like an Airbus 319 for 3,080 miles doesn't come cheap. It's pretty much a full tank of aviation fuel. You've also got to pay for the pilots who then have to travel back. Pilots are at a premium in British Airways at the moment. They've been struggling to recruit, train, retain pilots. So all of this comes at a cost to BA, and perhaps some regrets in British Airways that they didn't invest more in the facilities at London Heathrow, which are largely there now to service the aircraft and do basic maintenance, with a lot of the heavier work going elsewhere. Of course, British Airways have recently announced investment for the long-haul fleet at Cardiff, but potentially I would imagine British Airways giving some thought to whether it has sufficient and adequate maintenance facilities around its network. Well, let's also talk about the Airbus A320 fleet in mainline. Tango Tango November Echo at Glasgow since the 13th of December, that remains there. Tango Tango November Hotel returned from work at Madrid on the BA 9276 on the 10th of January. And November Echo Oscar Sierra flew out to Malta on the 17th of December, and that aircraft remains at Malta under maintenance. British Airways continuing, as I reported last update, to get the Wi-Fi fitted to its more modern Airbus A320s at Heathrow. A number of those aircraft were never fitted with Wi-Fi. That's a deficiency, of course, that many customers are unhappy about. So Tango Tango November Victor flew up to Prestwick on the 5th of January. We spoke last time about that. That aircraft returned on the 10th of January from Prestwick near Glasgow back to London Heathrow. The crew who brought that back had earlier in the day flown up to Prestwick with Tango Tango November Yankee, and that's the aircraft that's currently at Prestwick with work underway. Well, there's quite a lot going on with the long-haul fleet, and I'll talk about the Airbus A380. They did cancel the BA 193 to Dallas Fort Worth on the 9th of January, although I understand that was weather related due to some poor weather in the Dallas area. And I think we're all aware of the very sad news that comes from the Los Angeles area, and British Airways has obviously faced quite a lot of customers cancelling flights to and from Los Angeles. So they took the decision to reduce capacity, and the BA 269, 268 was cancelled on the 10th and 11th of January. One suspects more cancellations potentially lined up around the Los Angeles schedules for British Airways in the next few days. And I've updated you on Echo Alpha, the first of the A380s. That remains in Manila at the Lufthansa Technik facility. Even though our last update was comparatively recently here on Mark's Trains, Planes and Trams, I've already developed quite a lengthy list of Boeing 777 moves and news to talk to you about. I briefed you last time that Victor India Tango had flown out to Spain, to Teruel, and that returned after 3 days. We're not quite sure why they're going there. Is it maintenance? Is it repainting? What can they do in Spain at Teruel that you can't do at London Heathrow or Cardiff? Maybe it's about space and accommodation. But nonetheless, BA 9254 was the flight that aircraft operated back to London Gatwick after 3 days maintenance, back into traffic on the Gatwick long haul operation. Victor India Oscar remains in Taipei. That's one of the Gatwick 777s. And as a consequence, Yankee Mike Lima from the London Heathrow fleet remains on loan at Gatwick to cover those flights. There's a little bit of talk on a couple of the chat rooms about this. Some people getting very excited that they can see Club Suite aircraft operating from London Gatwick, and this they feel potentially means their flights they've booked over the next few months might transition to Club Suites. And look, this is actually tremendously simple. British Airways long-term strategy, sadly, at Gatwick is to have the 12 777s with Club World cabins that don't have Club Suites fitted, but they've got maintenance work to do on those aircraft. And when they are predicting a shortage of aircraft at Gatwick, they are planning to transfer one of the Heathrow aircraft. The Heathrow aircraft are only there when they're needed, and it's a bit of a luck of the draw experience whether or not they end up on a flight that you've perhaps booked on. But don't get too excited about that. Yankee Mike Sierra remains at Cardiff, been there since the 18th of December. That's obviously a bigger bit of maintenance, but one of the trips to Cardiff that's been quite short and sweet was the 777-300 Sierra Tango Bravo November, which returned from Cardiff on the 9th of January. BA 9179 from Cardiff back to London, straight off to the Seychelles on the BA 61. Bravo Hotel, which followed it down 2 days later, remains in Cardiff for maintenance. And we still have the unfortunate position of Victor India Victor complete at Cardiff with its new Club Suite cabin being fitted out. But sadly, some challenges getting the paperwork signed off. This is all about the problems at Boeing. Normally, British Airways would have agreed with Boeing to get that certified. Boeing has had its ability to certify such matters removed by America's Federal Aviation Authority, and as a consequence, the FAA, potentially with the involvement of the CAA, have to look at that work and sign it off. And they're adopting quite a rigorous process, but there's also a backlog. While this work is pretty non-controversial and is unlikely to have any issues raised, they still have to follow the process. So one can understand that's rather frustrating for British Airways, but hopefully that paperwork will be assessed, reviewed, signed off very soon, and India Victor will be on its way back from Cardiff and back into service. Slightly curiously, the next aircraft due for this work is Victor India Whiskey, and that aircraft actually flew from London Heathrow empty down to Teruel in Spain on the 10th of January. Not quite sure why, possibly repainting, although it'd be slightly odd to repaint the aircraft before it goes in for work, but hopefully they can do the work without messing up the exterior painting. Be also interesting to see whether the aircraft is sent from Tyrrell directly back to Cardiff or back to London. Very unlikely they would be able to do that work in Spain. So watch that space. Let's see whether India Whiskey returns to passenger traffic and then goes off for fitment, or whether the fitment happens sooner rather than later. And Yankee Mike India returned from work at London Heathrow to Gatwick. A very short flight across London. It'd be quite fun to join one of those flights, wouldn't it? A 20-minute flight from one London airport to another. BA 9172 on the 10th of January, and then straight into service that evening. Things have quietened down a little bit with BA's 787 fleet. The 7879 Kilo Juliet remains in Abu Dhabi, being there since the 14th of December. But as I predicted in my last video update here on Mark's Trains, Planes and Trams, the next of the 787-8 fleet, which is Juliet Charlie, flew on the 9th of January, the BA 9173, empty from London Heathrow down to Cardiff, and that's for work to start on fitting club suites and the slightly wider cabin refresh that goes along with this work. So that will be the third of the 787-8s to get the fitment and that work. Kicking off now in Cardiff. They're quite busy down at Cardiff. You can see quite a lot of aircraft moving in and out. Still no news, still no updates on the last of the 787-10s in the current batch. That will be registered Golf Zulu Bravo Lima Lima, but it's not yet on the register, and the aircraft is believed to be pretty much complete at Charleston, but they've not been ready to start testing the aircraft just yet. And that takes us on to my update of the aircraft that are unavailable for use, and you can see here the position in that respect. And that brings us to the end of this British Airways fleet update here on Mark's Trains, Planes and Trams. As you can see, quite a bit happening, quite a few snippets there. Good to see the third of the 787-8s at Cardiff with club suites fitment underway, hoping to see Victor India Victor back in traffic very soon. I'm going to get all that information updated for you, ready for the next fleet updates here on this channel. If you've enjoyed watching this, do press the like button, and I'll catch you soon.
Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like the video, subscribe, and click the notification button so you don't miss any of the great trips Mark has coming your way on this YouTube channel.